This is a recap of the 2022 horror movie named The Cellar. Watch out for the spoilers. The movie starts off as the Woods family moves into their new house in the countryside. Kiara and Brian are very happy about it, and they feel proud about it. Their son Steven is also very happy, but their daughter Ellie has a different opinion. She is not happy about it at all, as she feels sad about leaving her friends behind, and she feels disconnected from her parents, as well as she thinks they do not understand her. Their new house, which is called X-Hour, it is quite special for many reasons. There is a painting of an old man with weird letters written under it. There are triangles above all the doors except one, which leads to the cellar. Instead, it has a pentagon. When they leave the cellar, the door gets closed before Ellie could leave, and she starts screaming as she senses something approaching. Luckily, Brian finds the key hanging just next to it and opens the door. In the evening, Kiara asks Sally to babysit Steven as she had to go with Brian. Meanwhile, Ellie's on the phone. She suddenly gets scared by a figure wearing a cloak and a skull, and she runs and finds a new room with an old record player, an abacus, and words written in some other language. Steven says he has heard the house belonged to a witch. Ellie gets the player working, and the sound comes out of a man reading an equation, also written on the player before starting to count. Some hours later, a cool breeze comes out of the cellar, and the light goes out. She calls her mother for help, and she guides her to go into the cellar to check. She also tells her about a trick of hers to clear her mind. But then things go wrong when all Kiara hears is her daughter counting to 30 and not responding to anything. They rush back home, but do not find Ellie anywhere. They call the police, and a quick search of the woods shows no signs of crime. The police tell them to just wait till she returns from a friend's house or something. They ask the neighbors and search for Ellie once again, but the result remains the same. Brian understands that she was mad at them, so must have left for somewhere, but Kiara disagrees. She hangs missing posters the next day and forgets to pick up her son from school till the teacher calls. Then she goes with her son to the police station, but finds nothing there as well. They tell her it is not a crime scene, so they cannot do much. They also tell that Ellie had been getting bullied and harassed on social media, which makes Kiara uncomfortable, as she did not have any clue about this. Kiara notices a phrase written on the front door and decides to search about it, while Steven plays with the ball against the cellar door. The results showed that the phrase was related to alchemy and meant dissolve and coagulate. The pictures related to it were of a pentagon and a snake. She calls her son over, and he tells her that nothing out of the ordinary happened that night. She starts looking at social media to find out that Ellie had gotten a tattoo she had not told the family about. She decides to go to the cellar to check it out and finds Roman numbers on each step and an equation on the last step. But the most unexpected of all, she finds weird faces drawn on the walls of the cellar, only visible through UV. This made the police send a forensics team, but they also found nothing but the paintings were there ever since the 50s. She asked about the history of the house. Brian explains that there is nothing they know except that they bought it very cheap from an old lady. Night falls and they all sleep, but Kiara is woken up by Steven, who has wet his bed. After changing the sheets, Kiara goes to the washroom and listens to her daughter's voicemail. Suddenly, Ellie's voice starts coming, and as Kiara follows it, she is led to the cellar. As she enters the cellar, she kicks Steven's ball accidentally, and it bounces more times than it should. Kiara turns on the light and goes down, but does not find the ball anywhere. The next morning, Brian finds Kiara staring at symbols, and that she has written an equation on a piece of paper. He understands the feelings, but tells that the obsession with symbols will not do any good. Kiara starts searching for information regarding the previous owner, but she finds nothing important. She takes pictures of the symbols and sends them to her secretary to find out what they mean. She then attends a meeting, but her mind is occupied, so she leaves soon. Her secretary tells her that the symbols are Hebrew glyphs, and they spell Leviathan, a Jewish mythology creature. She picks up Steven from school, who is bleeding because of a fight with a classmate for saying that Ellie is dead. She searches for Leviathan on the internet and finds the same picture she saw next to the dissolve and coagulate article. She decides to try the record player, and the abacus starts moving as the man counts, and Steven starts to count as well, while walking towards the cellar, which is open all of a sudden. She turns off the player and stops Steven, only to find out he remembers nothing. She then goes to look at the painting of the man and finds his name is John Featherston, and the Hebrew glyphs are written on the picture as well. She finds out that his whole family had gone missing in the building, except for a daughter, and all of a sudden a breeze comes from the cellar and the power goes out. As she looks through the keyhole, she finds an animal staring back at her and jumps back. The power comes back, and she realizes the key had been on the floor all along. She hangs it and enters the cellar with her phone torch on, but the door closes behind her. She asks Stephen for help, but he is too short, so he goes to get a chair so that he can reach the key. Meanwhile, she accidentally drops her phone, and this results in the beast starting to breathe heavily. Brian arrives just in time to save her by opening the door. Later, Kiara tells Brian about all that had happened and all that she found, but Brian repeats that she is overthinking stuff. He goes to the cellar with her and finds some hair on the floor. She then goes to a university that holds Featherston Wing to talk to a genius mathematician. When he reads the equation, lights flicker, and as he solves it, he says that it is very complex and will require more time, but the theme is about dimensions. He also tells that his office belonged to Featherston and that his whole family went missing except for his daughter, Rose, whom she bought the house from. He promises to call Kiara when he gets to know more about the equation. As soon as she turns her new phone on, she receives a call from that mathematician who tells her that he had been calling, but he only heard a weird voice counting. He says that his colleague thinks that the equation is related to the mathematics of 12th century alchemists, and that he found a similar equation in a house in Belgium where the whole family disappeared. Brian comes to check on Kiara, and she tells him all that she has found about the equation and the house. The abacus starts moving on its own, and Brian tries to end her thought process by destroying the equation with the hammer, but the hammer bounced off without even making a dent. Just that moment, the record player started playing. Stephen moves toward the hidden compartment, where he sees Ellie showing a mark on her face. He cries out for help, but when his parents come, Ellie vanishes, only leaving behind her phone. The next day, Kiara gets a call notifying her that she can meet Rose in a nursing home. When she goes to meet her, the nurse tells her that Rose does not talk much, but Kiara decides to try anyway. She tells Rose about Ellie and asks for help. Rose writes down Leviathan and says that it's the name of one of the 7 princes of hell, and that her father brought it to this world to cure his ill brother, and that the ritual is not just in the cellar, but the whole house. When she arrives home, she finds Brian, who shows his own research about all of this to her, and she realizes that Rose was right. She says that the equation probably opens the gate. All of a sudden, the player starts playing, and Stephen loses control of his drone. As he follows it to the cellar, he finds Baphomet waiting for him. He screams, and the power goes out. When his parents reach there, they only find the drone, and they try to look for him in the house. They start hearing a voice counting, and as they follow it, they find Stephen, who tells them that he remembers riding a beast with horns. Kiara goes looking for Brian again, and finds him standing and counting, and as he reaches 0, he says that it's here. The door to the cellar opens, and the wind starts blowing, as the sound of Baphomet coming up can be heard. She runs to hide in a room, but the demon finds her, so she runs to the cellar. The stairs become longer somehow, and a door appears at the end of it as well. She runs toward the door to escape. Soon she finds herself in a tunnel, and is shocked to see many lifeless souls walking and counting. She finds Ellie among them as well. With her, Kiara returns to the stairs to run as she hears Baphomet coming. When they return to the house and close the cellar door, the power is somehow on, and the family is all okay. She tells them to escape, and as she approaches the entrance, she finds her torch on the ground, and her family starts counting. As she opens the door, she sees long stairs on the other side. In the end, the house is shown not to be in the woods, but on an unknown land.